try not to say anything I'll regret.
So, um, so Guru Ganesha Khalsa, it's just it's an honor to have you talking to you here on Divine Shakti Arts podcast, and yeah, I'm just really thankful that you were down with the idea of just getting together for a moment and talking and sharing your life experience with our listeners here. Um, yeah.
It's an honor, Mukta. It's an honor to be with you, and a pleasure too, just to have some time to commune together.
Yeah, yeah, and it's beautiful that we can actually do this. Even though I think you're on the East Coast, I believe you're down in Virginia. Is that right? So,
Yeah, I'm in Herndon, Virginia, which is 10 minutes from Washington Dulles Airport. We're kind of like we're in Northern Virginia, but a kind of a suburb to Washington D.C.
oh,
Where all
okay.
the craziness
Yeah.
always happening. So I'm outside the Beltway praying that everything inside the Beltway serves everybody in the whole planet.
Right. Yeah, I can relate. Yeah, we're a little out of New York City here. Actually, probably like an hour out. It's upstate New York. So
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, we're a little removed, but it's very peaceful. But
Are
you
you
still have.
near Alex Gray, the artist?
Yeah, he lives nearby actually, right across the river.
Oh,
And
nice. Yeah, because we did a concert up there at one point, maybe 5, 6 years ago. It was so nice there. And
oh,
he
very
showed us
cool.
all his art, his
He's incredible.
metaphysical, uh, you know, acid rock kind of art, which we love.
That's right. Yeah, he seeing his art this was back like, 12 years ago when I first saw it or something like that, or maybe more at this point. It was back like 2005 actually. Um he just seeing his art gave me the experience, the reality of spirituality. Like
Yeah, yeah, because you look at it and you see infinity,
yeah, it's true.
unending in all directions, and yet it's on a finite, canvas, but it looks infinite.
And you feel it resonate, like, oh, what he painted there, like, that's true, like that, it feels right. There's something in it that like you can kind of agree with. It's so it's
I
cool that
think
you
art is so important to us, man.
yes,
I
yes,
mean, painting, music, all sorts of art, just so
yeah,
important.
absolutely. So yeah, I just wanted to yeah, talk a little bit about you and your story now, and I'm just fascinated by your whole journey. I guess you grew up in the '60s revolution over there, and the consciousness expansion that happened during that time. So you were kind of right in the midst of that. And then yeah, I mean you've gone on to just become such an accomplished musician, and you've played with such beloved artists that all around the world people just like they love, Sonam Kaur, uh, and then I've just been kind of getting interested in your recent endeavor of the conscious selling that you're doing, and I've heard a little bit about that, um, and just your kind of approach to selling, but with integrity and kind of doing it from an honest place. So that was kind of a new thing for me to hear about that you're also doing that. So
Well, I actually have been doing that longer than I've been recording music, but it just, in terms
fascinating.
of me and the
Yeah.
yoga community, they know me more for being involved in the music
And
scene than teaching conscious business. But that's
got
important. Business is very important. It's an opportunity for people to come together and treat each other like human beings.
absolutely
And it's busyness that brings people into relationship, business.
right. So yeah, if you don't mind, maybe you could just give us a little bit a brief introduction, or tell us a little bit about your life, kind of what brought you to your journey that you're on.
Well, it definitely, I mean, I didn't consciously plan out my life, I was kind of born into it. And of course, for any of us, as far back as you can remember, it was you waking up in the morning, and then every day you wake up, there you are. Today I woke up and there I am again, and so it's kind of like Groundhog Day in a way. You get to live the day over every day and try to do it a little bit better, with a little more kindness, a little bit more loving, a little bit more compassion. But I was born in Boston, Massachusetts, September 24th, 1950.
All right.
So it makes me 71. I'll be 72 in September. I'm enjoying it. With each consecutive decade, I'm enjoying life a little bit more.
All
You know,
right.
I think I'm sinking more into being me and
Yeah.
less into what the world, everything was trying to make me into. And I think what I am essentially, oh, you need a little background first, then I'll tell you about
Sure.
my work at residing deeply in that peaceful place inside me, which is meditating all the time, but I'm not always there with it. You know, my mind isn't always with the meditator inside me. But my father was Russian Jewish ancestry. My mother was Irish Catholic. So I joke, this is what happens when you mix a Jew and a Catholic. And then, not to mention also you add in about 150 LSD trips in college and strange things started to happen.
I see.
And I embraced a yoga path. And I got, you know, after a bad LSD trip, the lyricist for the rock and roll band I was in college called Cat's Cradle grabbed me, drove me 3 hours. He had friends, a young couple in their early 20s who were yogis and vegetarians living in Williamsburg, Mass, in a log cabin with a river, not a river, a stream in the
Stream.
backyard. Yeah, and he dropped me off there, and he told them, he said, "Hey, this is my friend. You know, he's the lead guitar player in our band. Please nurse him back to health." And these were very sweet people. You know, they weren't
Right.
affiliated with any group or anything. They were just a couple that had been introduced to yoga, and they went to work during the day, and I was kind of in recovery, so they left me with a lot of good food and a lot of wood to chop, because if I wanted to stay warm, I had to go out and split wood, which was very
Oh,
healing. And
wow.
they were also vegetarians, so I was still a meat eater, and I transitioned into, which helped me at the time. I mean, I don't judge it. People got to do what they feels right for themselves. But when I made the transition, I dropped a bunch of weight. I started to feel lighter.
I
I
see.
started, and so I kept up, you know, with the yoga. And whatever I do, I have a tendency to take a deep dive into it, you know. And so I took a deep dive into yoga. I was particularly inspired by Vivekananda's books.
Oh, wow.
Raja,
Yeah.
yeah, Raja Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. He had these little red books. I don't know if he wanted them to
Uh,
be red, but they were all red. And I could identify him where I was staying. They had yoga books everywhere, including the complete illustrated book of Hatha Yoga. Can't
right.
even remember who wrote it, but it was a big book, and every page had a different asana. So I was
Very cool.
trying to learn all those asanas on my own because I had hours during the day while the couple hosted
Yeah.
me and uh, and I realized, you know, it would be helpful to have a teacher, have somebody kind
Right.
of. I had a lot of questions would come up.
Yeah.
And then I did. I ended up meeting this gentleman from India in probably January, February '72. Yogi Bhajan, who was teaching Kundalini yoga, and I got into it. I liked Kundalini; it was very vigorous, and I was only, you know, 21 going on 22,
Oh, wow.
so you have a lot of energy, you
Yeah.
know. And also, I was, you know, I think in a way I welcomed the yogic lifestyle because it was about falling in love with yourself first, and then that would give you the
Spreading it out.
capacity to be with other people. Because at the time, I think even though all those LSD trips gave me a glimpse of another reality, at the same time, it was it was a roller coaster ride because you're expanded for X number of hours, and then all of a sudden you're contracted.
Right.
When all that stuff wears off and you're down kind of almost in an animal like state, just feeling really miserable. So it was
Right.
an up and down ride.
Yeah. Not a permanent solution to the serenity there.
Yeah, so eventually it was, practicing regular yoga and being in a community with people with positive intention
Right.
helped me to leave the drugs behind. And then, of course, I really missed, I had a band for 3.5 years and we were getting some real traction. We got a recording contract with Pierce Southern Music in New York City, which was a really good label at the time.
Oh, nice.
And
I see.
right when I kind of started doing the yoga, we got invited to New York to do a demo album for Pierce Southern. They were talking about putting us out on, so after 3.5 years, 4 years of hard work, we were on verge.
Right.
But the level of drug consumption within the band community was just a little much for me when I was starting my yogic journey. So I actually resigned from the band, which was very painful.
Right. It's funny. I see that a lot with people on the path. They come to this crossroad, and their desires, their worldly desires, could be like really beautifully fulfilled on one direction, and then the other direction, it's like it requires a sacrifice, but you get the yogic fulfillment, and it's like
Exactly. Exactly, man. Because I was going from where we, being a rock and roll band, we'd stay up late playing
Yeah.
music into the wee hours. And all of a sudden I did a 180-degree flip because as a yogi, in the path I was on, we were doing a daily sadhana from 4 a.m. to 7. So I was trying to do it on my own, even when we were new. I had already been living in the ashram community for 3 months when the band convinced me to come to New York and record the demo album.
Oh,
Because
right.
I was kind of moving away. And it was that 2 week period, even though I played some of the best guitar in my life during that recording session because I was clear, that I made the decision that as much as I loved everybody in the band, I couldn't be in the band at that point in time. I was trying to get up to do my yoga in the morning. They were still up and they were like putting joints into my mouth. And I'm saying, hey man, I'm getting up to do yoga, not to put more smoke into my lungs.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So I said, hey guys, I love you guys, but I got to walk this other path, at least
Right.
for a while. And they were a little upset at me because they were like, Jesus, man, we're just making it and you're walking out on us, So
Yeah.
I did carry a little guilt around me with me about that, but I knew I needed to do it.
Right.
And but then my music kind of went into a little bit of I won't say a sabbatical, but I went from really working on the music, trying to develop myself as a lead guitarist, which
Right.
is very different than strumming chords and chanting.
Yes. Yes.
So I took the transition from being a serious musician to taking what I knew about music, and I was comfortable playing a guitar, which was a good instrument for the Kirtan universe. It was either
Yes.
harmonium or guitar back in the early days,
Right.
because some of the teachers from India came and they brought some ragis from India to teach the Westerners, Kirtan.
Right.
And of course, we have our own unique way of doing it because we grew up with Western music, major and minor scales and everything. Everything was either major or minor chords. And it was always,
Right.
well, in fact, a lot of the chants that we wrote back then, we started with the chord progressions. If we found a good chord progression,
Right.
it wasn't hard to put an 8 vibration mantra and connect it up with a chord progression that was in 4 or 8,
Yes.
And but for the next 30 years, from about 71 almost to 2000, I was kind of, one of probably 8 or 10 people in our spiritual community who was leading chanting regularly. I was kind of one of the main musicians in the DC community. We had a vegetarian restaurant, all that kind of stuff.
I see.
And I loved it. I tell you, man, every morning we were doing these Guru Ram Das chants for 31 minutes. 60, 70 of us in our early 20s, all living in 3, 4 houses in DuPont Circle in Washington, D.C. And every morning we get up, we do our yoga, and we ended with 31 minutes of chanting the Guru Ram Das. And I tell you, almost every morning there were tears in my eyes.
Oh,
It was
wow.
so beautiful.
That's amazing. What an
And
experience.
and it filled me. And it filled me. And then I'd head to the restaurant, and I started back there. Here I was almost making it as a rock and roll musician. And everybody in the ashram started as the dishwasher. So I put in my
Sounds
first
familiar.
honest days of work as a human being, washing dishes 12, 14 hours and pots.
Yeah. That'll do it. Yeah. It's good
And
save
I
up.
learned the power of mantra there, Mukta, because, for a while I was like, I was told that, hey, this is teacher's training. And I'm like back there washing dishes going, teacher's training. This is BS. Da, 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 da. Finally, someone came up to me and said, you know, and at that time I hadn't got a spiritual name. I was Mike. And they called me, the band called me Fly Mike because I was always tripping.
Right.
And so somebody comes up to me in the community and in the dishwashing corner and says, Mike, every day I see you in sadhana strumming your guitar. You look in total bliss. You rock. Because I always do this. I'm barely even aware of it when I'm playing. My whole body is rocking. They say, you look like you're in total bliss. I see tears pouring out of your eyes some mornings, and it's not tears of sadness. I know it's tears of joy. He said, why don't you, instead of, transmitting negativity from the dishwashing corner here in our kitchen, because you're always muttering under your breath, why don't you just chant to Guru Ram Das while you're washing dishes and see what happens? Because work is worship. If you apply, if you're
Right.
in the right space.
Can be.
So I started, I said, first I was like, but then about an hour later, I said, well, it can't get any worse. So we had a big sprayer, and I'd pick up tons of dishes coming in. I'd take the dish, spray it up, put it in the tray, and I started going, Guru Guru Vahe Guru. Another dish,
Right.
Guru Ram Das Guru. Click. Guru Guru Vahe. Because I had a big voice, Guru Ram Das. Not that melodic, but big. Guru Ram Das Guru. Before you know it, everybody in the kitchen is singing along.
Wow.
And we got 10 people in the kitchen going, Guru Guru Vahe. The juicer's singing. The guy on the stove is singing. The guy on the salad table. The gal making the pastries. The vegetable chopper. Everybody's singing, and then all of a sudden the efficiency just went to a
Wow.
whole other level.
Yeah, the cohesion of
Everybody
everyone.
getting into that positive vibration. So mantra is way more than sitting with a group of people and singing your
Yeah.
heart out, which is beautiful. It's for everything.
Yeah.
Ever since then, I usually have mantra playing somewhere
Yeah.
in the house.
Amazing. Yeah, I could totally relate to that. I've pretty much been in the exact situation that you were describing there, being at the dish pit, and just getting tons of dishes coming in. But yeah, like you, I found it super helpful to be chanting something. It just kind of lifts your state. All of a sudden, you're just watching the dishes get done in front of you. It's all just getting
That's
done.
what was happening.
Yeah.
It was like all of a sudden you're an observer. You're in the flow. Life is flowing through you, and everything is kind of organizing, arranging. I'm watching all the people in the kitchen become more efficient. And I was like, it was an interesting experience to
Yes.
see the shift in energy and also the interconnectedness. We were all working much. So interestingly, the son of my business partner on my sales training side, my business partner is a guy named Frank Garza.
Mm-hmm.
6'7". He's in his late 50s. His son happens to have won the Naismith Award, John Wooden Award, as the nation's best college basketball player the last 2 years. When Sporting News picked him as the college player of the year.
Oh my God.
And plays for the Detroit Pistons, the NBA now. Luka Garza. Maybe if you're a basketball fan, you may have heard of him. But in his sophomore year, he was going through some struggles. He had 4 games in a row where he was great. 20 points, 10 rebounds. He's a center. He's like 6'11".
Okay.
Then he went into a slump. Where he had 4 straight games where he didn't play that well. And he was really going through some internal suffering, because you know how it is. Your career almost becomes your identity.
Right. Yeah.
Even though, we all have incredible intrinsic value as human beings, as just kind of an infinite ocean of trillions of cells vibrating. But then we take on all these identities. And oftentimes our identity gets interlocked with whatever our career is. So if you're a basketball player, how you feel about yourself oftentimes goes up and down depending on the game.
Yeah. Yes, you're kind of enslaved to it almost at that point.
I'd say most of us human beings, and I was trapped in this, and still to a certain extent, because you're constantly working on it. I think Dr. Eric Byrne, and I studied this in college. I went to a psychology school, Clark University in Worcester, Mass. But Dr. Eric Byrne said, he called it the IR theory, that so many of us, our identities are interlocked with the different roles that we play in life.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a basketball player and you have a bad game, all of a sudden your self-image collapses.
Right.
All it takes is 2 hours and you're feeling bad about yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I recommended to Frank instead. I said, look, let's get together, the 3 of us, and maybe 3-4 hours before his games. And he's played in the Big Ten, this is high level of basketball. We started doing 20-minute meditations, 10 minutes of pranayama, 10 minutes of deep silent meditation. First game he did that. He had a sprained ankle before the game. He went out and scored 44 points against Michigan.
Oh my God.
Set the record.
That's points. Incredible. Oh my God.
And of course, after that, we got to meditate. But it was making a big difference. It was helping him be more present. He wasn't overthinking as much.
Yeah.
Because you know how the mind gets trapped in. That's it. The mind gets trapped in the past and future. And when you get into the present, all of a sudden, all the years of practice, is just flowing. You're operating more instinctively. You're in the flow. Your mind is not dragging you down. So every game since we're doing 20-minute meditations every morning, even if there isn't a game. I just finished one with both Frank and Luka.
Wow.
And, so this is a challenging year. It's his rookie year in the NBA, so there's also ups and downs when you're a rookie.
Yeah, right. Oh, very inspiring. And maybe that will be a model for all athletes at some point in the future.
Well, we're putting together a program for, Division I college athletes, professional athletes, where we provide, meditation content, some live, some recorded. So it's kind of exciting.
Oh,
and we're
wow.
doing a lot of that philanthropically, And also for underprivileged youth, we're providing them with, meditation coaching and stuff. It's amazing what just slowing everything down for 15, 20 minutes shifts all of a sudden the caliber of the thoughts are much higher.
Yeah. It's amazing. And it's like by doing that, in a way, you're aiding to speed up the evolution of humanity, even the athletic evolution, because we're just getting better and better at things. And it's funny how we need to just kind of slow down and connect to ourselves to accelerate that process of being able to achieve more. So
and I'll tell you, I love athletics. I love people from all different walks of life getting out, competing, doing their best, and then at the end of the game, giving each other hugs.
Right.
right? And you have, it's very different than getting out on the battlefield and we're trying to kill each other.
Yeah.
It's a
And
way for men, in particular, to take some of that Mars energy, right?
yeah.
Expend it and come out feeling respect and love for everybody.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Um, yeah, so I guess like back to you a little bit. Like your journey of sadhana. Was there any period where like you felt, there was a struggle, like the struggle on the path of sadhana, like oh, I'm really hitting something tough here, or this is not working, and maybe just a bit about that, and maybe how you like got through it if you did. You could be still working with it. It's
Yeah, well, things started to shift for me, in particular, a couple of years ago when all the revelations came out about Yogi Bhajan. But I feel like I've come out of it knowing myself a little bit more. And, I had some anger for a while. Anger is comes and goes like every other emotion.
mm-hmm.
I pray for his soul, but I no longer relate to him as my spiritual teacher, which means I've now created my own sadhana, which I enjoy more.
Yeah, yeah.
I, I'm
So,
get- I sleep a little more. At 71, a good night's sleep is helpful. I used to joke that sleep deprivation as a spiritual practice was highly overrated. For decades, I was getting up at 4 in the morning, even living musician's hours, having a gig, finally getting to bed at 1, but then I felt I'm supposed to get up in 3 hours.
mm-hmm.
I'm no longer, I think, hey, people that are getting that transmission from within, that they should get up and do 3 hours of yoga and meditation from 4 to 7 a.m. God love them.
Yeah,
I now get 6 to 8 hours of sleep, and I start my sadhana. And I'm fortunate at 71. I'm semi-retired. I'm still doing a lot, but I call
yeah.
my own hours. And part of that is I usually do my sadhana more like between 7 and 9 in the morning,
Mm.
more
Yeah.
rested.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, wow. So it seems like going through what you went through, it kind of forged you to kind of like really like just get really concrete about your own presence within you.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and just do the stuff that really resonated inside me, and trust that.
I also wanted to get your, you know, being a spiritual person, a lot of times there's a very ascetic kind of turn. So you kind of go in, and there's like a reluctance, as I think you were even describing earlier in this talk, how you kind of went more inward and you stopped getting involved with, say, your band and making music. And I wanted to know maybe even your thoughts then and now about creating, because I feel like it's a important just topic to bring up for a life of a spiritual person. And
Well, what I
go ahead.
love about creating, man, is it puts you purely in the present moment. When you're working with people on a song, or you're playing a song, or you're painting, or this or that. But music, especially for me, the minute a big part of my sadhana is picking up my guitar. And because the minute I start playing music, I go into that flow. And I feel so, I don't know, I just feel like me. So that's the closest I come. And I would encourage. I think the way the universe works through us is through the creative process. At the core, we're
Mm,
all creative beings. Everybody's an artist. I mean, if you're building an algorithm,
rhythm,
algorithm,
rhythm, yeah.
That's a form of create, right? With computer software
Yeah.
or whatever it is, that's creative. If you're cooking, that's creative, right? Opening in a restaurant, coming up with a menu, that's creativity. It's not just reserved for musicians and artists and sculptors. I
Right.
think that's when we all feel the best is when we're involved in a creative endeavor that we love.
Yes. Yes.
And I know life doesn't always unfold in such a way that everybody gets to do that every moment of their life, you know.
Yeah.
But I think that, you're hearing Mukta about all the people that are leaving their jobs and moving into creative endeavors these days.
Yeah, well, it's just the topic. Yeah, I do hear of that, and I hear of like about a confusion in general of the spiritual person, of like, do I be active like in the physical life, being a creator, or do I not? And there's just some sort of conversation that I feel is helpful to have there.
Yeah, and I'm really. I also find that organized religion is a little bit behind the eight ball in terms of how we're unfolding in turn.
Yes.
Like your generation and the generation to come are so much less judgmental
Mm.
and all embracing. Not everybody. There's a handful of people that say, "Well, yeah, this is the way you have to be. You have to be straight. You have to be this. You have to be this. You have to be
Right.
this. You have to be bullshit." What makes them the judge?
Yeah.
And I think that the most important thing is to be loving
Yeah.
and to be less judgmental and look at everybody. Well, they're kind of like a part of God, part of the ocean. And life becomes so much easier when you let people be who they are. Of course, within, if somebody starts killing other people, then
Yeah, yeah,
maybe
some
have to
action needs to be taken.
take them off the playing field.
Yeah.
But in general, I like to, even with children, I like to give. I have four grandchildren. My son has three. My daughter has one. And
Yeah.
my son and my lovely daughter-in-law Jen, they have a very different approach to raising children than maybe I did.
Mm.
And because we were in a structured community, and there were a lot of shoulds, and it
Yeah.
was tough on the kids on a certain level because they had to fit into a box that maybe wasn't who they were on a natural level.
I
So
see.
my son's whole philosophy, after being brought up in a really disciplined environment, is to give his three children room to really explore their nature.
Mm.
He feels like every child has a certain nature, and if you give them a minimal of boundaries and let them fully explore who they are, they're going to be much happier and more fulfilled. And that's kind of what's happening. Two of his kids, two of my grandchildren through him are teenagers. They're so comfortable with themselves. They
Right.
have
Yeah.
this sense of well-being.
That's cool.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And I
Yeah,
think
I see the two poles. Like I was brought up kind of like that, where I think my mother allowed pretty much everything. It allowed me to really uh,
explore.
explore and discover certain qualities about myself that I knew were worthwhile, it allowed me to really pursue the things that really meant something to me. But on the
Like
other
what?
hand,
Which things meant something to you?
well, there's a certain, I guess, a certain mysticism and a certain art and music, and just being a creative individual, loving, that was a big part of a value that I had as well. So yeah, those things were were the things that I felt were like, okay, here's a gem here. Like this is worth living for.
Well,
And
they gave you the freedom to explore yourself.
yes, yes. So
Nice.
it it
Did
allowed
they
me
have a
to.
religion or a tradition themselves?
No, not really. I think they were, they're from your generation. I think you're probably around my father's age, and it was just kind of like an open, kind of grew up in that time where there was like experimentation and kind of openness, and
Yeah,
so not necessarily got into a religion, raised Roman Catholic, but they were kind of open to whatever possibility may exist, and
nice.
it so it kind of gave that opportunity of really finding oneself. I would say.
So
Um,
you're not guilt ridden.
no, no. But on the other hand, I see how maybe there was a certain lack of discipline, and if that maybe happened, perhaps a little like earlier on, maybe it would have led to um, proper habits that would have been in place that would have helped me kind of manifest things a little bit more effectively later on.
Right, right. I see what you're saying. Yeah, it's a delicate balance between
Yeah.
the two,
Right.
between over discipline and lack of
Yes.
freedom, or too much freedom and no discipline.
Right. It's that kind of play there, that divine play, I guess, is you have to be intuitive about it. There's no
But
really
were your parents
solution.
loving to each other, or are they loving to each other?
Yeah, for the most part, I'd say. Yeah, there's always, of course, every most people deal with their problems in the family. Of course, I had my
Yeah,
share.
it kind of gets absorbed into the DNA through
Yeah.
the ages, right?
Yeah. But yeah, that play is it's interesting to hear about, and yeah. So I guess just a little bit more about you, and I'm curious about your time. That you've spent, a lot of time on tour also, and you're in the middle of a deep sadhana practice, and you're also surrounded by like such amazing, talented musicians. And our community, we've listened to your music and Sonatum's a whole lot. It's always playing in our restaurant, and it's just a very beautiful thing. And I'm curious to how you dealt with all that time on the road, and were you able to keep your vibration up during the whole experience?
Yeah, I think so. Uh, it started in the 90s, in the mid 90s. I started to feel an emptiness in my heart.
Hmm.
And I was trying to get into, and all of a sudden I kind of went into a mild depression. I was still doing sadhana. And I went to visit one of the healers in our community. And he said to me, Gurganesha, there's something inside you. There's something that you need to do this lifetime, that you kind of veered off the path, that path, and you're not going to feel any fulfillment until you start doing it again. And I was like, I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, it just hit me like a lightning bolt. I said, "Wow, yeah." Back 1970, I had this incredible desire to live the life similar to like Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not to get into the heroin and all of that, but something about his musical flow.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I call him my first guru.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that he would get so elevated musically, and then it was having such incredible blissful experiences with thousands of people at the concert dancing to his
Yeah.
music, and then he'd get back to his hotel room by himself a lot, and it was just such a dramatic difference that it's easy to start, that when that you start feeling that gaping hole inside you, which is the 180-degree opposite of what you felt on stage. A lot of guys in my generation, a lot of musicians, guys and gals, fill that gaping hole with drugs, to get some
Yeah.
temporary. And fortunately, we were really, so it was the late 90s when I was with that healer, and I realized, yeah, you know what it is? I need to pursue music professionally. I
Mm,
need to get not just my music, but get some of our music, our community's music, in particular, Sonata. She and I had become friends. We had played together at various gatherings, and it was a really good chemistry, you know. And it was kind of the minute we started playing, we were in this flow, and I could see everybody else get into this flow. It was very invisible on a certain level, but you could see it happening
yeah.
and feel it happening. And then at one point in late 99, December 99, at a winter solstice gathering, I said to both Sanatam and Livtar Singh, another, wonderful singer-songwriter in our community, and I said, you know what, it's time. We've been talking about this for years. I'm going to finance this because my sales training business was doing really well. I started that in '88.
Oh wow.
Done really well with it. I said, we're going into the studio. We had a guy in our community, Liv Singh, who had a company called Invincible Recording in Phoenix. He had recorded all of Singcar, or most of Singcar's stuff in the 70s and 80s. And I said, okay, let's find a weekend where we can all go. I'll cover your flights. I'll finance the whole thing. We're going to make an album. And they were like, really? Okay, we're in. And so January, literally, first weekend, January at the turn of the millennium, 2000, Sananam Kaur and I and Livtar Singh went in to Liv's studio in Phoenix. He had a really nice home studio, separate little building, soundproof, gorgeous in there. And we made an album. We had like a super cosmic experience. I mean, tears. We called the album Reunion because it felt like we were getting back together and doing this again, and that we had done it at some point,
Yeah.
whether you believe in reincarnation or not. And subsequently, over 2 years, we made 3 albums as Peace Family. Reunion, Carry Us Home, and To Heaven and Beyond.
Mm,
Livtar, Sanam, and I. And then all of a sudden, the music started to get out. My garage, people say, oh, you founded Spirit Voyage. I said, well, no, I hadn't founded Spirit Voyage yet. Spirit Voyage got founded because my wife wanted our garage back. I never founded Spirit Voyage to make money. Just to I was taking some of the profits that we had in the sales training company, invested in the music because I wanted to get this healing sound out to the world.
yes.
So I spent a lot of money on the front end making records. I made 3 with Sonatum and Livtar that I financed. And then when my wife, and you had to, in those days, you had to order 1,000 CDs was the minimum anybody would manufacture. So we weren't selling that many CDs. So they're stacking up in my garage.
Right.
And my wife was like, she was using the garage for a variety of purposes. And so Spirit Voyage started when she wanted her garage back. So
Yeah.
subsequently, I started making music with Guru Singh and Seal, the Grammy Award-winning artist, sang on one album with us, called The Game of Chance, which is a beautiful album. Then subsequently I realized, Sanatam's got this voice. When she was in the studio and started singing, she was like an extraterrestrial. She'd literally light up, and it felt like something was coming through her.
Right. Yeah. It's like
We'd look at Livtar sing, and I would look at her and go, "Wow, that's amazing."
Yeah.
And she'd start kind of channeling lyrics, all sorts of things.
Mm,
We would start. So, in any event, after we recorded together a few times, I felt like we got to get this out on the road because yoga centers started hearing about the music, ordering. I had my main person, office manager for the sales training business, spending half her time in the garage shipping CDs to yoga centers. So then I decided Livtar and Sananam and I should get out and have some Kundalini Yoga music festivals, weekends where we taught some yoga, and we did kirtans Friday and Saturday night at the local yoga center.
right.
So we started but Livtar got sick, so it ended up in the beginning just being Sananam and I. And, year one, maybe 2001, we started to go out and do some of these, and they were very successful, actually exceeded our expectations. I mean, we start with maybe 40, 50 people would come to the Kirtans, but the next time through, there'd be 100, 150 show up, and the next time through, 300 people would show up. Next time through, 500, 600 people would show up. And we added some, for almost 11 years, she and I were touring together, somewhere between 75 and 125 concerts a year. That was a lot.
That's a lot.
And we had various other musicians would travel with us, mainly tabla players. We had Christian, who's now known as Phoenix Quinn, who's a great producer in LA, played tabla with us for a number of years. He's also produced a bunch of my stuff over the years. We had Manish Vyas, who Miten from David Miten turned me on. I called him up one time because we had to go to Europe on a tour. And Christian's mom he just found out his mom was, had like third or whatever they call it, third degree cancer.
Yeah.
So he couldn't go with us.
Mm-hmm.
And I called up Miten, who's a kind of an old friend of mine. We're both old rock and rollers. He was more of a folk singer than a rock and roller.
I see.
But he said, oh, yeah, we got a great tabla player he's in Germany now. Let me call him up. He called up Manish Vyas, calls me back, says, Manish is waiting for your call. I called up Manish he met us 2 nights later. First time we ever played together was in Stockholm in front of 1,000 people. And he just sat down there, and he was incredible.
Wow. What an experience.
And so we toured with Manish a couple of years. Then he brought his lady, Tanmaya, was an incredible. In any event, it was a great 11 years. But by the end of it, stylistically, Sanatana and I were going in different directions. She wanted even deeper, quieter, more meditative music, which is phenomenal. I mean, she does meditative music. But she looked at me and said, Ganesha, I know you want to rock out a little bit more, because I was bugging her to do a little bit more, 1 or 2 kind of more rocking pieces at the concert. So why don't you do, we're doing great. Why don't we and it was like that. It wasn't like we had a fight or anything. It was like we made a decision. Okay, you know what? Okay, let's keep going.
Yeah.
But let's take a little bit different path. And I started a band, and I started fulfilling my rock and roll mantra rock fantasy. This was 2011. She and I worked together solid, like 2000 to 2011. But 2010, I started also touring a little bit with Tina Malia. Mm-hmm. Sanatana kept, Sanatana had a baby with her husband in 2008, and from that point on, she wanted to tour. Understandably, she wanted to tour less and spend more time with her husband and daughter. And I still was like a touring junkie. So I called up Tina Malia, who we'd met. You know who Tina is?
Yeah, it's we listened to the album that you've made with her a lot as well at the Red Dot Kitchen over here.
Yeah, and she has another album, Silent Awakening, which is amazing. And it's kind of spiritual folk music. But so I started, in the spaces where Sanatana didn't want to tour, I started to do some touring with Tina. And in any event, it was a natural flow. 2011, Sanatana also gave her an opportunity to, be the band leader without having to deal with this old man who wanted to collaborate wanted to co-lead the band.
I see. Yeah. But
I started Ganesha Band, which was a total democracy. And I, it's kind of like I remember what Jerry said when they asked him if he was the leader of the Grateful Dead. He said, "There's no leader of the Grateful Dead." And we did everything as a form of a collaboration.
Right. Yeah.
And we had a couple of great years. I started out as a 6-piece band with Hans Christian on cello, my buddy sock guitar and rhythm guitar, Matt Dorko, a.k.a. Gursangat Singh, as the bass player, and then Paloma Devi as the lead singer. She was also part of the Kundalini community,
Yes.
and we rocked out. We did a 27 concert tour with Dave and Me 10 in 2013, where my son, who owns Bright Star Live Events, promoted that event. We were averaging 11, 1,200 people a night that show. I think we kind of blew Dave and Me 10's mind because we were opening for them and we were playing rock and roll mantra, you know,
I
and,
see. Right.
and
So
they never said anything, but I'm not sure. I think they probably would have preferred that we had a little bit more of a mellow lead into their music.
right. Yeah. Being that
But
they're
it all worked out great, and we still have a fabulous relationship.
yeah. It's a really beautiful track that I've seen you go on, and yeah, the way you and Sonata would gel that period of time, it just like you said, I feel like there's just this immense channel of divine would actually come through, and you'd be able to inhale it. It's like you'd feel it and be able to inhale it, and it's I haven't really caught that in much music in history. Like, oh, there it is again. There it is. There's beautiful moments of inspiration, but with that music, it was a constant stream of it, and that would fulfill.
Hey,
And
can I recommend one of our albums so that people who want to hear that and experience it?
absolutely,
There's an album called Sonattam Kaur Live in Concert with Guru Ganesha, Manish Vyas, and Ramdas. From our we recorded 44 live concerts that we did with the four of us in 2000, and it was 2007, 2008, and then Christian and I, he was doing sound for us and recording everything. He and I went in and went through all hundreds of hours, right, from 44 concerts. And we picked out the best 60 minutes. And that album is still might be Spirit Voyage's best-selling album, but it's a live,
yes, yeah,
and it captures,
right,
each one of those tracks are tracks that we've recorded in the studio. But the reason we selected these tracks with Sonattam's input as well, of course, because something magical happened live, like you were describing. So each track in that album, as starting with an Azure Solver, all the way through, Govinda Hari, has something unique, kind of like what used to happen with the Dead. Their studio albums were great, but it was always live Dead that the true Deadheads wanted to listen to.
right, yes,
So, but that'd be a great album for people to listen to. Also, before we end, I just want people to know that I've been doing a lot of solo music of late during the pandemic because the band hasn't been able to get together, and we're in different places. And usually we'd set up a tour, show up at the starting point 2 weeks early, rehearse for 2 weeks, and then be off on the tour. It's
yeah,
different now. But there's a bunch of really nice solo stuff that I've been rolling out that's just mostly me and my guitar and songs that are meaningful. I did a few covers. I did Landslide,
oh,
the
lovely,
Stevie
yes,
Nicks song, which is
my
kind of,
favorites.
yeah, and it kind of articulates kind of what's happened to my heart during the last couple of years with the community. I also, I'm releasing a cover from U2 in a few weeks called I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For. I don't know if you remember that
Yeah,
U2
oh
song.
yeah, of course.
Bono wrote it. It's a song I could always resonated for me, even all the years that I thought I had found it. But people ask me, you just haven't found it, Guru Ganesha, you're 71 years. Well, I say, well, half the time I think I found it. And half the time I think I still haven't found it.
Yeah,
So I've been working on that song during the half, and I still haven't found it. And then there's a bunch of new originals that I think people will enjoy. One called Undying, which I wrote with this gal who wrote the lyrics.
mm,
And it's all about the soul's journey, and it's a tribute to the people who've transitioned during the pandemic. And it's soothing, I'm told, for the people who have loved ones that they've been left behind.
I
and
see.
people they love have transitioned. Apparently, this sound current, the lyrics are really helping people's hearts.
Oh, beautiful. So, where best can we find that music that you're putting out these days? Like your new pro. I did want to bring this up, and since we're on the topic, anyways, where would be the best place to look for your music and just your current projects in general?
Well, if you have a streaming platform, and I think most people, especially your age, are subscribing right to either to Spotify
Right.
or Apple Music or Pandora. So there's a few others. So it's all this new music is under Guru Ganesha Singh, because I embraced the Sikh path back in the 70s as well. If you were, for example, if you go to Spotify and just do a search for um, Landslide, Guru Ganesha Singh, that album will come up. It's there's multiple. Right now there's three pieces on it, but as of next month there'll be six new tracks on that album, which is called River of Starlight. But the way you roll music out these days is interesting. We're rolling one single at a time, and then it becomes an album at the end.
Yeah.
That's the exact
Fascinating. Yeah.
opposite.
Fascinating the way that works. All right, beautiful. And just I have one last question about your music, and then
I'm good for a few more minutes if you
okay,
want.
okay, great. So it's just these last two things. Now the the spiritual force that has come through the music, right from when you started, and I'm so glad you followed that signal and brought that part of you out again. Because I mean, look what happened. It's so great. The divine had this chance to really like unleash this whole cache of energy onto
Yeah,
the
and I'm super grateful
yeah.
that, and it was determined to deliver the message to my obstinate mind.
um, do you think like the it was just a natural product of the sadhana that you and the people involved were doing that kind of brought that quality in there, or was it
Yeah,
something
I
else?
really believe that, a regular practice, it's like putting every day I put a brick or two in this spiritual foundation that I can feel being built. And eventually, you look up and you realize, wow, I got the beginnings of a cathedral here. From
Yeah.
putting, but the key is to avoid spiritual ego. I don't care how many sadhanas one has done. If you start feeling in any way, manner, or form any sense of superiority over any other being, then your sadhana is not working.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation too, and
It's so
it'll
tricky.
sneak in there. All of a sudden, you don't realize that you've created some like structure of identity, this of a spiritual person, and then
That's right.
yeah,
That's what spiritual ego is.
yeah,
You got layers and layers of identity, and if you sat on a platform and taught and felt the incredible, almost electric current that comes through you when you're facilitating people having these beautiful experiences, you
hmm
could start to think that's you.
right, yeah,
Dangerous shit, my man. Dangerous.
yeah, tricky. You really
We
got to be.
are, in my mind, and I can't prove it, we are all equals. We are all equals, part and parcel of the same ocean. And to me, the infinite wisdom of the universe is inside each of us. We can just calm the mind enough, not try to put your thoughts and feelings into inner Siberia, but just get so calm and slowed down that your soul is like Teflon. Thoughts and feelings just kind of bounce off and float away.
Yeah, beautiful. So last thing I'd say would be just any just message or something you'd want to share with the community here. So there's a lot of spiritual seekers and artists and musicians here, and you've really hold that example of someone who is kind of merged those aspects of life. And do you have any advice or a certain message you say to the aspiring creative person slash like seeker?
Do it as much as possible, and know that you are exponentially more than enough. You know, you are already enlightened, and stop denying it, and just realize being enlightened means you're just living for equality and justice for all. And you feel love in your heart for everybody, even the people that you most vociferously disagree with philosophically. You can feel love in your heart. You can disagree and speak your truth without being disagreeable, as Ruth Bader Ginsburg used to say, the great Supreme Court justice that passed away a few years ago.
Thank you.
You asked for a few words. I'm sorry. I'm not a man of few words. So.
No, that's very beautiful. And yeah, it's been such an honor to talk to you, Guru Ganesha, and I look forward to your further endeavors and your musical projects, and I'll definitely be playing you at our restaurant, and also celebrating your work throughout Divine Shakti Arts in general. So.
Well, thanks, brother. And just keep doing what you're doing, man. It's a great vibe. It's a great vibe.
All right. Thank you so much. And if you ever are in the New York area, I'd love to have you, come by at some point, or a workshop, or whatever makes sense.
Well, let's break bread together in your restaurant, man.
There you go. We could have a conversation there. Whatever makes sense for you. But again, thank you for your presence.
I'll bring the guitar along and we'll sing a little together.
That'd be beautiful. Yeah, I could play my tablas or drums or something.
Yeah,
as well.
That'd be awesome. The tablas works really well with my stuff.
Yes.
Or a kit, or the kit. I like the kit too.
Yeah, we could do
All right, man.
Much love, Guru Ganesha.
Much love to you and the whole community, man.
Thank you so much.
All right. Satnam.
Satnam.
The strings on this old guitar are a road I walk upon, stepping between the notes. I've lost and found myself. Sacred sound carried me this far.